In this lesson, we're talking about the weird American T. Now, that's not a technical name, that's what I call it, because there are so many strange things that the American accent does when we see the letter T. So there are a lot of rules, but don't worry, I'm going to make sure that you understand all of them in this lesson. So get ready to learn everything you ever wanted to know about the American T. Now, before we get into the rules, I want to make it clear that these are all a part of the American accent only. Other native English speakers from places other than the United States will not do these same things. They don't follow these rules. They may do some of them, but not all of them. So Canadian accents, British accents, Irish accents, Scottish accents, Australian accents, New Zealand accents, all do something different with the letter T. The rules that we will learn in this lesson only apply to the general American accent, sometimes called the standard American accent. We don't call it that so much anymore, but these all apply to that neutral, invented, non-regional American accent. So definitely keep that in mind as we go through all the rules. And here they are. All the rules covering what you need to do when you see the letter T and you're using an American accent. Now, don't worry about getting all the information right now. I'm going to explain each rule and give you some examples of each to practice. But to get started, I wanted you to see how many rules there actually are. If you'd like to download a PDF list of these rules, I created one to go with this lesson. You can download it for free. Just go to my website, theaccentchannel.com/allabout-T, and I will post the link to download that list right below this video. Okay, first rule. When the letter T is at the beginning of a word, it's pronounced as a true T, with a pop or that puff of air that we call aspiration. So when T is at the beginning of a word, the letter T comes at the beginning of a word, it's pronounced t, t, t. The tip of your tongue touches right above where your top teeth and gums meet. So not on the teeth, right above where the teeth and gums meet. It's called the alveolar ridge, and you can feel it. If you feel along behind your teeth with your tongue, then you'll feel where the teeth and gums meet. Then there's a little flat part like this, and then there's a big swoop of the hard palate. We don't want it on the swoop. We don't want it on the teeth. We want it on that flat part and just the very tip of your tongue. T, t, t. Do you hear that pop or puff of air? T, t, t. That's how you pronounce T when it comes at the beginning of a word. Let's try it in some words, some examples of words. So think about that tip of the tongue placement right on your alveolar ridge. Time, tell, take. Good. It's also helped some of my students to think about when you're pronouncing this sound, because if you're in English is not your first language, you're probably producing T more on the back of your teeth and with less of that pop of air. Tel, take, time, right? Instead of tell, take, time. So it can be helpful to imagine a little or H sound right after the T sound. So time. Think about an H. Tell, take. Now keep the H, just make it shorter. Time, tell, take. Very nice. And making sure your tongue is above your teeth, not on your teeth, that can definitely help as well. Moving on to the next rule. For T, now this one gets a little crazy, so listen up, but we will make sure you understand it when we look at the examples. So the rule is this. When T, the letters, okay, when the letters T or the letters RT together appear between vowels in a word or a phrase, we'll practice both, the T is pronounced as a very light D. So it's a d sound. It's not duh, it's da. Sometimes referred to as Retroflex T. I like to think of it, and when I work with my students, I tell them that it's one hit of a rolled R. So if you can your R, run, instead of just one hit of that, is that sound. That's the sound. Now it's hard to isolate because it only happens in between two other sounds. So you're not going to have to do this at the beginning of a word. But if you can, roll your R, that's exactly what you need to do for this sound. And the placement is very similar to what we just learned. It's on the alveolar ridge, but you're pressing a little harder with your tongue. Da. So you'll find this T or RT between vowels. Let's practice it in a few words. So let me first give you, let's listen to the difference between a true T and this T in these words. So say them both with me. Not water, water. Not water, but water. Not started, started. Not started, but started. Not it is, it is. Not it is, it is. It is. Now remember, this is the general American accent. Yes, there will be some variety in other English accents, but with a general American, this is what happens when you have T or RT between vowels. So let's try those words with the standard or general American pronunciation. So you're going to find that the sound. Water. Started. It is. Now this only happens in a phrase if you're connecting the words. If you decided to pause for some reason, in the phrase it is, for example, it is. Oh, right. It is. If I pause, this rule doesn't apply. And you know it wouldn't apply because you would know that it would sound weird if I said, oh, it is. When we have a pause, something else happens, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But just know that this T between vowels turning into the light D only happens in a phrase like it is, but only when you're connecting the phrase. Now there's one exception to this rule, and we are going to talk about that right now. So as we just learned, when you see the letters T or the letters RT together between vowels, in an American accent, you'll pronounce that as a very light D. But the exception to that rule is this. When T is at the beginning of the strongest syllable, it's pronounced as a true T, exactly the same way as the T is pronounced at the beginning of a word, and that's the first rule that we learned. It's T when it's at the beginning of the strongest syllable. So we say martini, not Mardini. Even though it's an RT between vowels, we don't say Mardini, we say martini, because the T is at the beginning of the strongest syllable. We say Italian, not Italian, even though that would fit the rule. This is an exception because T is at the beginning of the strongest syllable. We say Italian, Italian. Actually, it's more like Italian because that's an unstressed syllable. So really rush that first syllable, make it an Italian, Italian, and pop that T with that puff of air. We say petite, not petite, even though that would fit the rule. This is the exception. T is at the beginning of the strongest syllable. We say petite, petite, petite. Now, notice the difference between these two words. In the word photo, we turn the T into the light D because the strong syllable is the first syllable. It's not the syllable that begins with T. So that is our T between vowels turning into a light D rule. T is between vowels. The T is not at the beginning of the strongest syllable, so the T is pronounced as the light D, photo. However, when we look at the word photographer, the T is at the beginning of the strongest syllable, and the exception to the T between vowels rule applies. We pronounce it as a true T with that little puff of air, just the same pronunciation that we would use if it were at the beginning of the word. We use it at the beginning of the strong syllable. So we say photographer, photographer, photographer. Good. Let's try both of those words. Photo with a light D, photographer with a true T. Photo, photographer. Now I know this gets really tricky, but this is what I tell my students. Trust your ear. If it sounds wrong, it probably is. You would know that it sounded weird if I said photographer. Photographer. You would know that sounded weird. Now, I also tell them this. When in doubt, just use a true T. If you said photo, it would not be the end of the world. You might sound a little more English or British or Australian. It's not something that American speakers would do, but people would still understand what you're saying. So if you're ever in doubt of any of these weird T rules, just use that true T with the puff of air and say photo. Because it will sound weird to put the light D where it doesn't belong. To say photographer, that's going to cause problems, right? But you probably knew that photographer sounded strange. Another example, you would know if it sounded weird if I said hodel instead of hotel. Same example, T's at the beginning of the strongest syllable, hotel. And if I said, which sounds better to you? This word, which is the correct pronunciation of this word? Hodel, hotel. Number 1, hodel. Number 2, hotel. Even if you don't trust your instinct, trust your ear. Your ear knows which pronunciation to use, even if your brain doesn't always remember to use it. So trust your ear. When in doubt, use the true T. Okay, moving on to our next rule regarding the weird American T. When you have, again, we're looking at the letters T and RT. All right, we looked at T and RT between vowels, but what happens if the letter T or the letters RT together come before a consonant or they're at the end of a line? They're the very last sound that you need to say. Well, when that happens, in the American accent, we stop before we pop. We stop the sound without popping it out. So let me give you the example. It would make sense. And you do have the choice here, but we'll talk about the choice in a minute. Let's just get this. Stops before it pops. It's called a glottal stop. You stop the sound with your vocal folds. You stop the air it's like a sound without a sound. Let's just try it. So in these examples, network. So instead of network, instead of popping the T, network, network. We create this sound by, think of a hiccup or bringing you can't really do it, but imagine bringing your vocal cords or your vocal folds together. Network. Instead of saying absolutely with a true T, we stop the T before it pops. Absolutely. 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 In a phrase, this also happens in a phrase. It was. It was. It was. It was. It was. So when T or RT come before a consonant, we stop before we pop. We don't have that puff of air. We stop the sound by stopping our voice. It was. The same thing happens when T or RT is the very last sound that you say at the end of at the end of a phrase or at the end of a sentence. So if you said something like what, you also, most of the time, will stop the T before it pops. but you do have a choice. It would be perfectly fine if this is the last sound that you say and you wanted to add some clarity or there was a specific reason, you could pop the T and say, what? 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 You have that choice. But be aware that if you do this anywhere else, and you do always have the choice to pop the T, it can change the meaning slightly. And if that's your intention, that's totally fine. But just be aware of what happens. Take a look at this sentence. There's a big difference between saying not that part and saying not that part. Not that part and saying not that part. Obviously, my facial expression and other things are playing into it as well. But let me try to even pull back on that. Not that part. Not that part. We sometimes will pop the T on purpose in a phrase or anywhere in our speech for a stronger emotion. First, to add clarity. That can be the reason. I just want to make sure that you understand. No, not that part. This part. I could do that. But a lot of times it's because I'm angry, not that part. Or because I've said something 4 or 5 times and I'm annoyed that I'm having to say it again, not that part. You know, it feels like a lot to do it on all 3. I probably wouldn't do it on all 3, but definitely at the very end, not that part. That can express anger or a stronger emotion. And that's fine if that's what you are intending to do. But if you're not intending to convey that stronger emotion, you just want to be aware of what popping the T how it can affect your listener. So it's good to practice and know these rules just for that reason. But I do want to mention that especially with this one, with the with the stop before you pop rule with T and RT, you always have the choice. And when in doubt, pop the T. Good. Okay, next rule. When you have the letters NT together between vowels in a single word, pronounce the T as a true T. So you're going to pop the T here. So we say, in the general American accent, we say center, internet, winter. Good. So NT in a single word between 2 vowels, pop the T as if pronounce it as a true T, the same way we pronounce T at the beginning of a word. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, because everyone says this, I hear other Americans say center instead of center. I hear lots of Americans talk about the internet instead of the internet. I know so many people who say winter instead of winter. And I get it. I agree with you. It definitely, you're right. Losing that T in the NT combination is a part of many, if not most, if not all, dialects of American English. But the non-regional American accent still has rules. And remember, it's what you should know about the general American accent. No one grows up speaking it. Anyone who uses it has learned to use it. Good or bad, that's the truth. It's an invented accent that people learn. It's not their native accent. So this is one of the rules of that invented accent. And the reason I'm telling you to pop the T in an NT combination like this is simply for clarity. As an example, if you take a look at this word, if you lose the T, winter becomes winter. Winter is a different word, and that can cause word confusion. And the whole goal of improving our speech is not to sound perfect, it's to be easily understood. And this helps you be more easily understood. So I know you will hear other people say center, internet, and winter. I'm telling you to stick with the T. It just adds a little clarity to your speech. Pronounce center, internet, winter, just for the clarity of speech. And it is a rule. The rules help to keep everything straight. So it's really your choice. But I tell my students, my recommendation is that you pop the T in an NT. When you have NT between vowels in a single word, pop the T as a true T. Good. All right, next rule. This one's really fun, actually, but take a look. You need to look at you'll see what I'm talking about when I give you the examples. So here's the rule. When T is part of the word ending ton, stop the T. We already talked about stopping the T, that glottal stop, stopping the air with the bringing the vocal folds or chords together. Shorten the vowel, sustain the N. So stop the T, shorten the vowel, sustain the N. So this is what I want you to do. I want you to say, button. But, stop the T, shorten the vowel, sustain the N. Button. Button. Got it? Let's try the next one. Same thing. This is an RT, so this will happen on RT as well. When you have ton as the word ending, curtain. 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 Kitten. Notice I'm not saying kitten. I'm not doing a lot of vowel there. Kitten. I'm doing tons of N. And for N, your tongue is on the, again, it's on the alveolar ridge, a little further back. And there's some air going through your nose. Kitten. 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 What you don't want to do here, you don't want to turn these into D. You will hear certain dialects of American English use a D in this situation. So you'll hear button, curtain, kitten. It's one of my pet peeves. Don't put a D there. If you're going to do anything, put a T. I'd rather hear button, curtain, kitten. At least it's very clear as to what the word that you're meaning to use. But if you can get it down, get this rule. Stop the T, shorten the vowel, sustain the N. Button. Curtain. Kitten. Very nice. This is a weird one. This is such a strange one. It doesn't happen that often. Don't worry too much about it. As I tell my students, just practice the common words that come up in your daily conversations. Those are the ones that will matter for this. And when in doubt, use a true T. It's never a bad idea to just, if you're unsure. It's always the best solution if you're unsure. This one's actually pretty simple, this next rule. When T is a part of a consonant cluster at the end of a word, especially, pronounce it as a true T. So a consonant cluster is just T with another consonant in front of it, two consonants together. Words like first, wept, fact. You want to pop those T's for clarity, and sometimes popping the T is, or not popping the T, doing something wrong with the T, is going to be the difference between the present tense and the past tense. So if you skip the T in this situation, you may end up, it sounds like you're making a grammar mistake. Your listener hears a grammar mistake, but you haven't made a grammar mistake. You made a pronunciation mistake. So make sure that when you have those two consonants at the end of a word that you pop first, wept, fact. It's going to matter a little, and we'll talk in another lesson about connecting words. It changes it a little bit, but if English is not your first language, it's always better to, only in this situation, I usually tell you connect, connect, connect. And I do want you to connect, connect, connect. But when it comes to consonant clusters at the end of a word, specifically with verbs that are past tenses, you do want to make sure that both sounds are pronounced. So pronounced. Both sounds are pronounced. Right? I pop that out because I want to make sure that you heard that I said pronounced instead of both words are pronounced. Both words are pronounced. Both words are pronounced. That sounds like a grammar mistake, but I didn't make a grammar mistake. I just left off the T. All right? We'll talk more about that in another lesson, but for now, consonant cluster at the ends of words, pop the T like a true T. Good. And here's our last rule. This one is, I guess it's the most simple, but it's also the most difficult because why? Why do we make the T silent? Sometimes in American English, the letter T is silent or not pronounced. And although there are some patterns, there are also just some random words that T is not pronounced. One thing that you can count on, French words. We stole a lot of words from French, and these words like, you can see this one, buffet, ballet, filet, words, French words that end in the ET. We keep the French pronunciation, although we use our long, wavy American vowels, but we don't pronounce it as a T, we pronounce it as an A. So there are some patterns that you can learn. But a lot of times it's just good to memorize these exceptions. Let me give you a few more examples. Christmas. We don't say Christmas, Christmas. We don't say listen, we say listen. The T is not pronounced. We don't say buffet, although some English accents will say, I don't know about buffet, but I know that some English accents will say fillet instead of fillet, so there is some variety there. But with a general American accent, that ET ending of a French word, pronounce it as an A, buffet. So that's it. These are all the possible pronunciations and situations for pronouncing the letter T with a general or standard American accent. And remember, if you'd like to download a PDF of these rules, go to theaccentchannel.com/allaboutT, or check out the link below this video. You can download my cheat sheet of these weird American T rules. While you're there, be sure to check out our classes, courses, my student practice library, and especially our teacher directory that will help you find a qualified teacher to help you meet your speech and pronunciation goals. Many of our teachers, our Accent Channel Method certified teachers, provide free assessments. So if you go to the teacher directory, our Find a Speech Coach page, you can find someone to set up a private session and tell you exactly what you can do to improve your speech. Again, I'll post a link below this lesson. This was a lot to take in, so if you have questions, please let me know. I wish I could tell you, I would simplify it even more, but the letter T with an American accent, it just gets a little crazy. So I hope you learned a lot from this lesson, and I hope to see you again soon at the Accent Channel.